Welcome to the REI Diamond Interview, your source for real estate investment jewels of wisdom with Dan Breslin.
Welcome to the REI Diamond Interview, part of the REI Diamonds podcast, your source for real estate investment jewels of wisdom. I'm Dan Breslin, and on these REI Diamond Interviews each week, I bring you the real estate investment community's brightest minds. Today I'm here with a special guest, Joe Nielsen. Joe Nielsen is a best-selling Amazon author, educational speaker, entrepreneur, and landlord based outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In 2005, Joe was 61 years old without a job or pension. Joe needed some steady monthly income. He had poured his heart, sweat, and blood into the corporate world and refused to go back to climbing the 30-year corporate ladder. He didn't have time for that. So Joe started investing in rental houses, and it was the best decision he ever made. 10 years later, Joe has 75 houses and 27 garages, earning over $24,000 a month in profit. That's profit, and has $4 million in equity that he operates under Delco Home Rentals, Incorporated, located in Boothwyn, Pennsylvania. After purchasing the houses and producing remarkable cash flow, Joe shares his experiences to success, along with his mistakes, failures, and exactly how he did it. Joe demonstrates a proven system in his first book, Buy and Rent Foreclosures, to build cash flow and wealth. Now with Joe's second book, The 7 Essential Habits of Wealthy Real Estate Investors, the companion book, Joe digs even deeper into the general concepts by giving step-by-step instructions, gritty, no-nonsense essays from the real estate trenches. As a graduate of William & Mary University, Joe has used his education to teach for many years and proves to be a dynamic speaker. Joe understands the reality of teaching and the need to communicate precise information and offers real numbers with real talk. Joe provides real information about how to purchase, finance, renovate, and rent properties in order to generate positive monthly cash flow. So welcome to the show, Joe.
Hello, Dan. I'm ready to go here. I'm excited about being on your show.
All right, appreciate it. So everybody, wants to know the big question. How did you get started in real estate, Joe? I mean, 61 years old. It's got to be an interesting start, huh?
Yes, I had been a teacher and a salesperson and an entrepreneur, and I was 61 and I was looking for an opportunity. My wife said I had to get out and earn some monthly income because I had no pension and I had no income. So I looked around and I interviewed, I put my resume out on Monster, I started student teaching. I just couldn't find anything, and then this was 2005, I ran across a guru who was purporting that you could earn $10,000 a month in rental income. So I started buying books and on Amazon on real estate, and I started buying foreclosures. And what I would do, since I lacked a large amount of capital, is I would buy them cash from a bank, and I would buy the worst thing on the block, but in a good school district, in a good area. And since it was the worst thing in the block and they couldn't get rid of it, I got a pretty low price. My average price was about $40,000. And then I would do a complete rehab, many times including mechanicals, and I learned to do it for $30 a square foot. So let's say I had $75,000 into the whole property at that time. Then I would get it appraised at, say, $100,000 and get 70% LTV and take back $70,000. So I only had $5,000 into the property. What I also found was that I could do niche rentals, not 3-bedroom houses, which comprises 70% of the market, but I found that 4- and 5-bedroom houses only comprised 15 to 20% of the market, but had a great demand for moderate-priced families. So I started going directly into that niche. and I found I could get $1,500, $1,300 as opposed to the $900 three-bedroom houses were going for. So my gross margin was enough to not only pay the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, but also to give me enough for the expenses and a profit. So my average cash-on-cash return from the $5,000 I had invested in the property was an average of $3,000 to $4,000. So I was getting back about a 50% ratio on what I had invested. And then as 2008 and 9 and 10 transpired in the Great Recession, I started buying the houses for less, and the banks were desperate, and the contractors were desperate. So I forced my prices of purchase lower, and my rehab came down to $30 a square foot, where it remains today. So I started really buying up to 15 houses a year, and just recently I've kind of stopped. I only did 2 last year. But my cash flow is really substantial. And the other good thing is in real estate, because of the tax depreciation and other situations in real estate, the federal tax that you pay is nominal. So that's essentially how I did it. I financed my way out of each property, hoping to have none of my own money in it after the financing.
That's interesting, Joe. So today, or let's say on the recent year or two, in the beginning, is you kept $5,000 in each property. Did you finally reach a point when you were buying these houses for less money in 2008, 9, and 10, where you were able to get 100% of your cash back out of the property, or even more than that? Or was it always, the system's always having you keep and maintain a certain amount of cash in each deal?
Well, in a few instances, I took out money. One property in particular, I took out $11,000, and yet it cash flowed to the tune of $4,000 a year, which again is like 5 or 6, because my tax bill is non-existent because of the depreciation of the property, but also the depreciation of the rehab, which can be depreciated. It's a thing called segmented depreciation, and you can segment it down to 5, 7, or 10 years. Your CPA would handle this. So, yeah, it's a situation that occasionally I would take money out. Now, I have to say this, that at first I didn't understand how to do this, and I got caught on some properties that I left in $50,000 at first in the 05 or 06 or 07. And that's too much to leave in if you want to expand into a lot of properties.
All right. So, you finance these properties with limited capital. Let's define that in full disclosure, Joe. I mean, were we talking you started with $50,000? Did you have a little bit of money? Did you have $2 million lying around when you started?
No. I had maybe $5,000. However, my wife and I had an IRA of $350,000.
Okay.
So we cashed that in. However, after 18 months, that was gone because I was leaving too much money into the properties. So what I was learning along the way is how to buy for less, how to rehab for less, and the niche marketing, which allowed me to have an average rental of about $1,375 to ensure that I had a cash flow. So basically, I left the $350,000 in 18 months, and from there I had to make do with cash flow, hard money lending. Banks would finance the purchase and the rehab because of the fact that my spreadsheet of all my properties always looked good, and my 1040s always looked good because of the cash flow.
Okay. So, I mean, this is my observation. I know your background a little bit and everything that you're telling me here, but it sounds like, let me just give you an example. A lot of people approach real estate, they buy a rental or two. It's kind of a hobby, or it's, I'm only going to buy a few rentals for later on when I retire. But it sounds like you started 61 years old, and you approach this as a business. I mean, you chose this niche here, and it sounds like you've systematized things. I mean, can you elaborate on that a little bit, just the way you think of, the entire real estate business and being a landlord, Joe?
Sure. I did look at it as a business, and I did have a business background, so I understood gross margin and the magic of it. I understood that I had to have, after rent and principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, gives you what is known as gross margin. From that, you take out expenses. I figured out that I had to have a minimum, what I called a standard, of $400 in gross margin, because my average expenses, if I squeeze tight, would be $200, leaving me only $200 a month in net. And that was my standard net. I wouldn't go below that. So when I was looking at a property, I constructed a pre-offer property checklist that it forced myself to do due diligence on each property that I purchased, and figuring out the rent, figuring out after rehab value, a whole lot of things, the complete rehab cost. So I would spend up to 2 hours on this pre-offer property worksheet. And basically I narrowed it down to the fact that I really started knowing what I was doing. And if you have a system, then you can purchase up to 15 properties, at least I could, a year, and be okay. But to hit on the gross margin, what my gross margin allowed me to do, that is rent minus PITI, is I have the gross margin now over $575 a month. And if you take out $200 for expenses, which no one understands, no one talks about expenses. How much does it cost to maintain a house? Well, I figured it out, and it's not on websites, it's not in books. Gurus don't talk about it. I figured it out to be 14 cents per square foot per month, up to, if it's in the house is in disrepair, up to 20 cents a square foot a month. And basically that comes out, that's just for maintenance. That's not including administration, et cetera. So if you figure that you're getting $575, and let's say you're getting your expenses are $225, so you're down to $350, or around $4,000 a year, which is good, especially in the fact that you may not be paying taxes on it. So by harping in on gross margin and then harping in on what comprises expenses, I was able to get a handle on the expenses and get a handle on the gross margin before I purchased. And that enabled me to bypass those properties that would not cash flow, which when I first started out, I purchased some properties that would not cash flow. And I had to get rid of those through the years and keep the winners.
So I have two things I almost want to ask at the same time, but if you had it to go back at the beginning and tell yourself, what were the landmines or the mistakes, what would you have done differently knowing what you know now when you first got started, Joe?
Well, absolutely. Great question, Dan. The first thing, when I talk, the first thing you really have to figure out as best you can is what rental niche are you going into? The real estate market is the biggest market in the world, and there's literally thousands of niches. If you were going to open a restaurant, you would have to say to me, okay, I'm going to open an Italian restaurant. But Italian is broken down into 100 different categories: Southern Italian, Northern Italian, pizza, this and that. And then you have to place it somewhere in the marketplace. Is it middle of the road? Is it high end? Is it low end? You have to understand what business you're going into. And in real estate, people don't teach that. Books don't teach it. And yet it's absolutely paramount that you go in at least having the concept of what business you're going into and who is your tenant and how are you going to serve that tenant, and is the supply and demand fulcrum of that niche favorable to you? Is there more demand than supply? Because the supply is not going to change because of the physicality of real estate, that no 800-pound gorilla is going to come in and build 4 to 5 bedroom houses. Or I also have a garage niche, and I also have a student rental niche, and I also have a young professional renting by rooms niche. But all these niches are not going to change as I foresee, over the next 10 years. And therefore, I pretty much understand what I'm going to make on a property before I buy it. What happens to real estate investors is they don't spend time on trying to figure out what business they're going into and the financial dynamics of that business as far as rent, PITI, and expenses. And therefore, they get in, and the first or second property can be a disaster, and then they're out of the real estate dream.
Yeah, that's key. I actually wrote an article on that same topic, which was partially inspired by your supply versus demand and knowing what niche, Joe, when I've heard you speak in the past. So I'm a big fan of figuring out the investment philosophy. Why are you buying in what neighborhood? Whereas, like you just said, I mean, a lot of investors kind of get in and something feels like a good deal. They buy something in one town, school district. They have no idea why they bought it other than they thought it was a good deal. And next thing you know, they're buying one, 25-minute drive in the other direction. I've made this mistake myself and bought in, different city that I had no idea why I was buying. It just felt like a good deal. And, in the end, I lost money on that deal. So I'm a huge fan of spelling out why you're buying these properties in these particular neighborhoods. And I love your answer to buy these 4 or 5 bedroom houses with great demand versus the amount of supply and the barrier to entry for somebody to take away the characteristic of the market niche for you by building more 4 and 5 bedroom houses. There's no way to economically do that to enter the landlord market. This must create a great situation for you to have these 4 or 5 bedroom houses that are in demand. I mean, what does that do when it comes time to find tenants, Joe?
Good question, Dan. I am in the summertime, which is when families move. So right now, tomorrow, there's an open house, and it's a 5-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms in a good school district, and it's a large house. It's a twin, but it's large. It's most probably 1,750 square feet with a fenced-in backyard, off-street parking. All my properties have hardwood floors, ceramic in the kitchen. So it's a very nice house. We have a website on Facebook, the new Delco Home Rentals website, and all our properties are really beautiful. However, we will have, I would say, 7 different entities coming into this open house, and we will most probably get 4 applications, and they will be silently fighting for that house. So when someone moves, we have a Facebook page, we have put it on Craigslist with pictures, and we have no problem turning over properties. So my average rental rate is 96% occupancy, and my average tenant stay is 6.2 years. Because if a person wants to move because they don't like this, they don't like that, they have to find another 4 to 5 bedroom house in a good school district with a good landlord. And we have a whole tenant retention philosophy. So it's difficult for them to move. Yes, they're too far from their job, or yes, their kids want to go to soccer at another neighborhood, or a whole variety of reasons why people move. But they can't find what they already have. And even if they give a 60-day notice to vacate, half of them will retract it after a period of time of going out there and trying to find something that is very difficult to find. So the whole concept of the niche comes back to what business are you in, and if there's more demand than supply, you're not paddling upstream, you're paddling downstream.
Wow, retracting the 60-day notice to quit. That's interesting. I don't hear that too often.
Yes.
How do you go about managing these tenants? Is it a management company, or are you doing this yourself, Joe?
Yeah, well, I'm doing it myself. I am attempting to retract myself a little bit from the day-to-day. But I, again, researched it, Dan, and I'm kind of a closet social worker. I'm a sucker for the sob story. And, and this has been very painful as far as, especially working with contractors. But tenants can get to me. So what I did was I researched it, and I got a book, a big book, from an institute that trains apartment managers, and they get some sort of certification, et cetera, et cetera. And I read it, and what I was taken back by was how they manage the properties. These are real professional guys and girls. And what they essentially do is they have between the tenant and themselves the lease. And the lease, my lease is a total of 26 pages. It has 7 parts. And basically, I communicate with my tenants in writing, mailed, and they communicate with me. They mail in the rent, and the postmark date on the letter is the date of payment. Past the 3rd postmark date, very clear, bring it to a judge. I've never lost on that. It's very clear the late charge, which is $100 past the 3rd, and it's $50 past the 10th. On the 11th, usually the 12th, if we're not paid, we file in district court. So we file early and we file often. Now, this seems to be as if somewhat draconian in my approach. However, on the other side, we're very good with our tenants. If they communicate with us in writing, we work with them. We give good service. We give them birthday cards. We give them anniversary cards and gifts and an anniversary visit from our rental agent. We give Christmas gifts and Christmas cards. So we have, and we send out a monthly invoice with a newsletter with the tenant of the month and et cetera.
Nice.
So it's kind of a balancing act, but we don't have a lot of drama. We don't have a lot of soap opera stories. If the tenant wants to communicate with us, unless it's an emergency, which they can call me and I'll answer. But if they call and it's not an emergency, I'll be nice to them, but I'll remind them that this needs to be put in writing. So between myself and the tenants is the lease, and we go by the lease. If you don't, or if I don't respect the lease, why should the tenant respect the lease? That's a very pertinent question. So I respect the lease, such as damage or sewer backups. We have a page in the lease that gives 60 issues and the price for them, and the tenant signs this. So if they break a window, it's $60 or whatever it is. If they break a door, it's $200. That's an interior door. If they break an outside door and it's also the frame, it's $600. So all these prices are already made up and they're in the lease. So if there's damage, the handyman goes in, takes pictures. We do pictures of everything. And then we send them a bill with pictures, with copy of the pertinent thing of the lease in yellow that they signed, or they may even have initialed. So
wow.
we're taking the drama out, and they know we're serious. So for me to manage 100 entities, that is 75 houses and 27 garages, it's not a lot of stress. It is some stress. It's not a lot of stress, and people are amazed that I'm able to do it. But between me and the tenant is the lease. And I got that all from this big book on managing, that's exactly what the professional managers do. They enforce the lease. They respect the lease. and they go by the lease, and they expect the tenant to do that, which the tenant agreed to do.
You're almost able to play, to a degree, a good cop, bad cop situation, Joe, with the tenant. So you're able to maintain a nice facade and a pleasurable experience between you personally and the tenant, or the rental agent, or whoever it is, your assistant, and the agent, by kind of referring to the lease as the higher authority in the relationship. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. And if they write in a letter saying, because of Mary Jones, my daughter needed an operation, we had to fund this and that, and we just say, the investors, we blame everything on the investors. The investors won't let us delete a late charge. The investors enforce that we charge for sewer backups. The investors this, the investors that. And then in the end, if it gets down to it, we file. And the filing is almost part of the negotiations, if I may use that, because they don't want to go to court. And the beautiful thing is, most of the time, if it's damage, we have pictures. And they know we have pictures. And they don't want to go to court with pictures.
So you're talking about filing early, file often. I mean, is that just for damage repairs, or is this for,
No. Damage, I'll just give you, for instance, a tenant, pretty good tenant. She's leaving, and she found another place. So she's on her way out, so everything's hunky-dory, and she owes me nothing. But this is the last month she's there, and she hasn't paid the rent.
Wow.
So she thinks she's on the way out, but on the 12th, we filed.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how this scenario is going to play out, but we will go to court, and we will get a judgment. We can't evict because she'll be gone, but we will pursue and hopefully collect. The filing in district court is pretty simple, and it puts a great deal of pressure on the tenant, especially if they want to stay. We also have a pay or move that we send out on the 8th, and that says they have 3 days to cure whatever it is, whether it's money owed or damage or et cetera, et cetera. And many times they call up all excited about 3 days that they're going to get evicted. Now, that's not true, but so we use these things, and it doesn't take us any energy to send out a pay or move notice, and it takes us very little energy to file in district court and fill out a $138 check and send it in. And, there's no phone calls, there's no arguing, there's no listening to stories. It's cut and dried. The lease is the king. When I gave a talk a few weeks ago on landlording to landlords, and Dan, you most probably have listened to quite a few people who got worn out of landlording, and they said the hell with it and gotten out of real estate because of being a landlord. And I gave to an experienced group, and I dressed up as a lease. I dressed up as a lease, and then I pitted my wife, who was the tenant, and she likes to argue with people anyway. And then the landlords, were the landlords, but I was the lease. So we had a whole session back and forth of, if you allow yourself to be bought into the melodrama as opposed to the thing that they have the tenant agree to, and the thing that they wrote up and my lease tells just about every possible situation. It's covered by the lease. I mean, 99% of the situations are covered by somewhere in the 26 pages. So that's what we do.
26 pages is a bit of a book, Joe. I mean, what's the process for this? Do you literally sit there and, read through the entire lease with them and almost train your tenant on the way in? I mean, let's talk about that process of even signing and presenting. That's a good question. Now, it's made up of 7 different things. One's the residential lease, and that's 11 pages. Then we have the lead paint with the pamphlet. Then we have the utility turn-on agreement, which before they get the keys,
the utilities are on in their names, so we don't have any drama there. Then they have tenant move in, move out, which is 4 pages of checklist that property is in good shape. But it also has that price list, which is invaluable when we're doing damage. Then we have the maintenance request, which they agreed to send their maintenance in on a form that we have, which is the maintenance request form. And they get 2 copies of that, and they initial that they received 2 copies. Then we have the required rental deposit, which is they either pay the security deposit up front, but if they haven't, and we allow them to pay, say, $500 of it monthly, they have the dates of when it is due. And then the last one, Dan, is where I spend 75% of my time during the 2-hour sit-down. And that is called highlights of the lease. And these are 33 small paragraphs, 3 to 4 lines, of the highly dramatic issues that come time and time again, and they comprise 80 to 90% of the situations that we have with tenants. And we read each paragraph, and the tenant initials each paragraph. So if it's a late charge, we send out the late charge, but we also send out highlights of the lease with that paragraph marked in yellow. Or if it's a sewer backup, and they're saying, well, it's not me, I didn't do it, etc. But they have the whole paragraph there that has the sewer backup and their initial. So we try to take the drama out, and it's black and white. That's what they agreed to, and that's the way it is.
What percentage, if you had to guess, would give you, try to give you drama? I mean, are you 100% collection rate on these damages and these items that you've gone over on your lease summary page there, Joe?
No, absolutely not. We're like everyone else. We don't collect 100%. However, we do bring it down to the line where if they want to stay, if they can't make the payment of 100%, they have to sign an agreement to pay $50 a month by the 15th, et cetera, et cetera. And then we track that. And when we send the invoice out on about the 23rd with the newsletter, with a maintenance request form blank, we send out for each item owed a separate invoice. And they can track them, the tenant can track them, and it's very clear. We do it on QuickBooks. But what it is just a lack of drama. If we're not paid, then, we go down the line, and the next move out is, the next piece of paper out is the pay or move. They have 3 days to cure on a certain situation. And then if they don't answer, then we file. And that brings their attention to it, because a lot of times I'm about to write a newsletter about a situation that I've just faced, and I had a heart-to-heart with a tenant who's been with me a long time, and they told me they get paid every 2 weeks $1,000. So they had to decide with the $1,000 to pay the rent, to make the car payment, to pay other bills. So it all depends, if there's enough pressure, should I say, that you come first. If you don't come first, then you come second, or you come third, or you come fourth. And someone's not going to get paid, but I don't want it to be me. So in this particular situation, they made a decision that they weren't going to pay me. And then we get on the phone, and because I did talk to them, they sent in a letter explaining the whole thing. And I called them up, and I said, look, you've been with me for 7 years. I'd like you to stay, but you have to send in a letter when I'm going to be paid. And they'll do that, and if they're not paid, I will file.
Good to know. So let's switch gears a little bit here. I do want to kind of cover this, and I know that the time's ticking away. Let's go into detail a little bit about how you actually finance these properties. I mean, say we have a listener, on this call here, and Joe, they say, they got 3-4 properties, or maybe, 5 or 6, and they've kind of exhausted the conventional avenues. Let's talk about the exact structure of the ownership and how you went about financing them, and maybe in like what size packages you had to put together there.
Okay. One of the things that I looked into was LLCs, and we talked to a few lawyers. We talked to my CPA, and basically we decided to own them personally. I own all but 10 of the properties personally. My wife owns the other 10. And we just create a situation with insurance that we have $1 million of liability. I mean, people are really afraid of liability. It's not that people are afraid of fire or et cetera. So we have $1 million of liability, and then we have a $6 million umbrella, and I have a $1 million professional management package. So we make it real simple, again, that we don't have to get into the LLC, or if it's one LLC per property or 3 LLC per properties or 5 LLC per properties, with the CPA filing for each LLC, which can be done on one form, or bank accounts, or et cetera, et cetera. But other than that, what I do is I have a spreadsheet of my properties, and I've always had. If they have 3 or 4 properties, they'll have a spreadsheet, and mine has, I think it's 13 columns, telling the banker everything they could possibly want to know. So I call up a local commercial bank. Now, let's say I ran out of the last one. They gave me 10 loans, and they said, Joe, we're going to wait for a couple of years, and then you can come back to us. So I get on the phone or talk to other investors who's loaning money to investors. So I get 3 possible. So I call them up, and I talk to the person that is the salesman, and hopefully they're also on the board, so they have some pull. So I find out what they want, and I make an appointment. And I dress up in a coat and tie. I have my spreadsheet. I have 2 years, 1040s. I have other income that I have and documentation of that. I have 2 months of my bank account. I have everything that they said, and a personal financial statement already filled out, a generic one, which matches my spreadsheet. So I walk in, and I'm walking in specifically for a loan, and I may have pictures of the property that I wished a loan on, and very importantly, I have a lease. Now, maybe the tenant hasn't moved in yet because I'm in the midst of the rehab, but I have a lease, and that's very important. If you're doing the rehab and you're looking for financing after rehab, which I do, I have a lease. Now, the reason I have a lease is because of the niche and because of the fact that they can look on my website, and the 5 houses that are to be rented there, they're all beautiful. They're all hardwood floors shining like an ice skating rink. White, everything's white, ceramic tile in the kitchen. Cabinets made by the Amish, very nice. The whole thing is very nice. And 2 bathrooms, which not all 4-bedroom houses have. And sometimes there's 2.5. So I'm giving the banker everything they could want to know and the lease. And then if it's a refi, that is, it's like I'm doing now, I'm trying to refinance a lot of property that I have 6.5 or 6 or 7%. I'm trying to get that down to 5.25. So I'm going into bankers, and I'm giving them all this information and I also protect my credit score. I have a monitor with Equifax, whereas anything that happens, I get a notice. And my credit score is about 790. And that's a whole different story, because at one time it was 585. And that was 120 days ago, by the way. But, yeah. What happened was that a bank locally that I had 6 mortgages with went into foreclosure, and they bought the 6 properties with all their mortgages over to another bank, which then promptly turned around and sold it to NationStar, which is a national servicer. And in that interim, the entire thing got entirely screwed up. And we had for 3 or 4 months, we were on the phone with India trying to straighten the thing out, and we couldn't get it straightened out. and we finally paid them what they wanted, and I filed in district court, which was finally successful, and we finally straightened it out. But in the interim, my credit tank was down to 585. It was crazy. But so in other words, you go in, you have to prepare. You can't just wing it with a banker, and you have to understand what they want, and you have to give them what they want because they're going into a committee. It's not like selling pots and pans. They're going to go into a committee, and they're going to dissect, and you have to have a lease. This is a commercial bank. They make their money giving loans to people like you. They hold those mortgages, and they want a lease. They're not going to rent. They're not going to make a loan to a property that's not leased. And the property has to cash flow, and you have to show them that. And if all your other properties are cash flowing, they have a pretty good idea that this one's going to cash flow too.
Makes sense. So, like your lease, is your credit report 26 pages long, Joe, with all these loans showing up?
Yeah. It's kind of funny, Dan. I'm about to refinance a shore property I have. I've gone into 3 banks down there. I haven't gone in yet. I've talked to them on the phone, and I tell them all the good stuff, and then I tell them that I have 61 rental properties. And it's like they dropped the phone.
Wow.
Yeah. It's because I don't qualify to get a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, and I'm a veteran, but I don't qualify for the VA. So it has to be a local. It has to be a local bank, and you have to get someone there who understands investment property because I'm carrying forward up to $500,000 loss carry forward because of all the depreciation and. They look at that, and it has to be someone who understands in investment property.
So, Joe, do you have any book recommendations for our listeners?
Well, when I wrote Buy and Rent Foreclosures, I really didn't know what it would do, but it's become the #1 best-selling investment real estate book on Amazon. And then I followed it up with the 7 Essential Habits of Wealthy Real Estate Investors, and that's doing well too. Buy and Rent Foreclosures, I think it almost is up to 300 reviews, and I'd say 90% of them are 5s. So it's really people have given me a lot of accolades, and therefore people have signed up on the newsletter, which your listeners can go to the Real Estate Professor Baby website and sign up for a free newsletter that I drop into their email box twice a month. It's free, and it's exactly what I'm doing at that time. So I just sent out a newsletter yesterday, and it was nice is good business, and it was how I have attempted to instill nice into everything we do with the tenants. Even if I'm evicting a tenant and we're in court, I will ask that tenant if she needs a ride home or make other positive comments to her. So whenever we have an interruption in our day and there's a tenant on the line or a tenant this or tenant that, even if we send out a memo that says you owe $500 and, ABCD, we'll include something that we hope the home is doing well with you. You've been a good tenant. We would like you to stay well into the future with us. Just constantly nice. So basically, if they want to learn real estate, I'm the real estate professor, and I was a teacher. I am a teacher, and I always will be a teacher, and I get a real thrill out of not just teaching, but having my people be successful. And people call me and say, Joe, you really helped me on this, and I'm not doing this and doing that, and thank you very much. And this happens all the time now, and I enjoy it. I'm built that way. It's a charge. My brother's a teacher. My 2 sisters are teachers, and I was a teacher.
So, Joe, I think you have an event coming up. Did you want to make a plug for that in Philadelphia?
Yeah, it's on my website, the Real Estate Professor Baby website, and it's October 9th, 10th, and 11th. It's my first national seminar, and you'll learn how to buy property, you'll learn how to rehab property, you'll learn how to manage property. It will be a case study method. It won't be no fluff, nuts and bolts, real world. We'll go over the pre-offer property worksheet. You'll fill it out maybe 3 to 5 times during the 3 days. You'll really learn how to assess a property. You'll find out how to look really and dissect the niche that you're in, that you hope to be in, or that you are in, or should leave. It's a real great idea, and basically it's $899, which is, for what you're getting, it's a steal. So if you are in real estate and you need more information or want to get into real estate, this would be a great way to put your toe into the pool. But I can tell you that from someone who's in the pool, the water is fine.
Nice. And for posterity's sake, dates are 2015 because this show may be listened to in the future.
Yeah. October 9th, 10th, and 11th, 2015 at the Crown Plaza in Philadelphia.
And it looks like we're approaching the top of the hour now, Joe. So I got one more question that I'd like you to answer 2 ways. First, for the investor just getting started, and then second, for the seasoned investor. And the question is, do you have any final jewels of wisdom to share with our listeners?
Well, for those that are in the business or that wish to be in the business, I would research, buy books, buy my books, come to my seminar, because you don't want to make an error in your first 1 or 2 or 3 properties, because that can blow you out of the marketplace. And this, unfortunately, happens to a lot of people. So you really need to know what niche you're going into, and hopefully it'll be successful. With the success comes more success. As far as seasoned investors, I think Joe Nielsen, and people are kind of funny, I go to seminars in the Philadelphia area, 3-day events, 1-day events. I listen to people speak on this topic or that topic, and people say, "Why are you here? You're the real estate professor." I'm looking to learn. All the things that I've said here, and my 2 books. 10 years ago, I didn't know any of this. So I learned and I built it up one step at a time. How do you get to the top of the mountain? 1 step at a time. And if you are in real estate, you know it's a good market, but you have to make sure that you eliminate the errors and gain on the positives. So I would just say education to both of those parties.
Nice. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree more. Joe, I'm going to have to get you out to speak at my networking group, the Ring Philadelphia meeting. So I'll tighten that up with your assistant, and we'll definitely keep our listeners abreast of when you'll come out. I assume you'd be willing to come out and speak at our group, right, Joe?
Absolutely. Love it.
Nice. How can people get more info about you? I know we mentioned that site, and I'll put that in the show notes here, therealestateprofessorbaby.com. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we cut off here?
No, but I believe that your listeners can do it. I did it. I constantly come across, there's a guy in New Jersey. He graduated his highest grade was the 8th grade, and he didn't learn from me, but he has 160 houses. There's a kid, he's 32. He's in my town. He has 130 houses. There's another kid down in Philadelphia and South Philadelphia and other good areas. He has 45 houses. So I'm constantly talking to other investors. It's kind of funny. Yesterday, a good friend of mine who's down in Philadelphia who used to have 150, he sold off some. He has 65, no mortgage. He by the way, he's an ex-teacher, an ex-Philadelphia teacher. He was a teacher for 30 years, and during that time, he built up his portfolio. So he sold off some of them and kept the better ones, and he doesn't have any mortgage, and he manages them himself. God knows the guy must have. I mean, all my properties today have mortgages. I'm mortgaged up, but we're cash flowing, which is the really key, which is why I got into it. I didn't do it for equity. I did it for cash flow. But normal people can do this. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to be, my wife says I'm still trying to figure out which way the screw turns. You don't have to be technical. but you can do it, and I believe that you can do it.
All right. Well, thank you, Joe, for coming on the show. I'm sure our listeners got a lot. I got 3-4 pages of notes written here.
Okay.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the REI Diamond Interview, your source for real estate investment, Jewels of Wisdom. You can sign up to receive an email update of new weekly interviews at www.reidiamonds.com. As a bonus for signing up, I'll even send you my free report on wholesaling titled Wholesale Houses 101, 9 Steps to Buy and Sell a House with No Money. That website again is www.reidiamonds.com. Until next time, this is Dan Breslin, signing off.
Thanks for listening to the REI Diamond Interview. To receive the REI Diamonds newsletter and interview monthly, sign up now at www.reidiamonds.com.